Welcome everyone to another episode of Financial 15. Kevin and I are ready to go. We're talking retirement again today, specifically looking at the three phases of retirement. What are the three phases? How do we go from one to the other? And how do we plan for it? All those questions are going to get answered. You want to stick around.
Yes, the three phases are very active, very passive, very involved. So we want to get to those immediately. But before that, we want to make some notes first. If you want to check out this video or more that we've done, please go to our YouTube channel, subscribe, link up, see as many of these things as you can, because we've got a variety of different options there. Also, you can find a lot of our material on our website at beckerorr.com. You can like us on Facebook at any time and get as much content as possible. But today we are dealing with planning for the three phases of retirement. And Clint, what are the three phases of retirement?
Yes, no more suspense. Let's just answer the question here. Here they are. This is from Lowe's Financial. They're a UK financial company, so they're the one that came up with the graphic here and categorized the three phases. I would agree with them. The active phase, a good one for that. We'll describe the three here. I think the active phase, Kevin, that's the stereotypical financial commercial. That's what that is. You'll see people on the beach, they're running in the sand, they're golfing, living life to the fullest. That's usually the active phase, right? That's an extension of your pre-retirement lifestyle for the most cases. You just take the work out of the equation and you're continuing to spend money on discretionary items, your hobbies, your travel. That typically all takes place in the active phase of retirement. Would you agree?
I think that's perfect. Yeah, I mean, exactly. It's the television commercial. It's, the dating website. It's I'm going for dinner here. I'm doing that. It's everything that I can possibly think of. It's the reason I want to get to retirement, because I haven't been able to do these things because I've been working. So you're right. I mean, that basically sums up the active phase. It's while you're still doing everything while you can, because everything's good for health and everything else. After that, we sort of move into that sort of passive phase scenario. That's where you've got more of the routine. Okay, now I'm sitting there and, you've mentioned it here beforehand. I go to the bank on Mondays. I get my laundry done Wednesdays. These are things that have to happen each and every time. They do it the same way. I may not be doing as many things. Maybe I'm not going out as much. I'm not looking at doing, some of the aspects that I did beforehand. Dinner twice a week out. I don't want to do that. I want to stay home, and I've got a specific program I may want to watch on TV. And this becomes more of, it's a routine scenario. That would sort of be an avenue as what passive would look like, would it not?
Yeah, a relaxed routine. I think it's a good way to describe it. And sometimes people work part-time during retirement. That would probably stop in the passive phase. Usually the part-time work would take place in the active phase. Also in the passive phase, everyone's different when it comes to their goals with housing, but typically you'd see a downsize during that stage in the passive phase, maybe going from a larger home, now that the kids are gone, empty nest, perhaps to a condo or a smaller dwelling. That's normally in the passive phase. You see that happen. And then the next stage is in the supported phase. Typically, costs will increase in the supportive phase. It could be another move, but in this case, maybe it's a move to a care facility, an assisted living facility. That might happen during the supported phase, because the less discretionary spending in terms of travel and hobbies, more spending in terms of medical and healthcare costs. That's normally what you see in the last phase there, the supported phase of the three phases of retirement. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's a perfect scenario. So, you're starting out with more expenses in the beginning, you're sort of getting that middle range scenario. And then, as you mentioned, the supportive phase is exactly that. Now it's healthcare costs, it's medications that I may need. And some of this may not or may not be all covered under the plans that I have. So yeah, my expenses can easily go up. I think it's a perfect definition of what the three phases of retirement look like going forward.
Yeah, exactly. And this is done by the UK. I mentioned Lowe's Financial there. It actually matches up quite well with some Canadian research. This was done by David Blanchett in combination with Morningstar Investment, and it was published in the Financial Planning Journal. And he looked at government data, and we talked about this before. He looked at government data. He did some analysis, then made some spending estimates based on that, and he found that pattern, which you can see, that U shape, or what some people call a smile, the retirement smile, and it matches the three phases of retirement pretty closely. You've got the higher spending in the early years, kind of a dip in the middle, and then an increase in spending in the latter years. And the size of the dip will vary depending on the overall level of income. The idea being that the higher the income, well, you have more discretionary needs. So that discretionary spending tends to be the part that's squishes, the part that goes away in that middle phase of retirement. So we're seeing it line up quite well here. The three phases of retirement lining up with some of the data we already had on Canadian spending patterns for retirees.
Yeah, I mean, it's a perfect definition. And I mean, I can relate to this in ways where I just look at my parents. I mean, basically, once retirement hit, it's same sort of lifestyle. Nothing changed. I mean, spent some time down in Palm Springs in winters. We're going out here and there. But they're now in that phase now where the home's been sold, the apartment's been bought, more of a routine scenario. So as I can see, I mean, there's less and less income that needs to be spent there. So I don't know what to do, but I'm sure that the next phase is coming slowly but surely down the road. So, and again, we'll wait and see how long that time frame is, and that's an important thing we'll have to take a look at down the road, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And some takeaways from this. So we described the three phases. We said it matches up with some of the Canadian data we already had. Well, how can we plan for this? What do we do about it? Well, the first thing to note here is the phases are not all the same length. It would be easy if that were the case. If there's 10 years in this phase, 10 years in that phase, and there's a nice concrete item, that's of course not what happens, right? Health is the key barometer there. Hopefully that first phase is 20 years. Hopefully it's very long, but what determines that you go from the active phase to the passive phase? Well, it's really going to be health. That'll be what determines you go from one to the other. Same thing when you're going from passive to supportive. Health will be the factor there that moves you from one phase to the other. And because we can't really plan for that, at least not in a concrete fashion, we got to make sure we take a few other items. But the first takeaway, though, understanding the three phases are not the same length, and it's health that determines how we move from one for the other. A second takeaway here, Kevin, is you need to have a plan.
Yeah, because I mean, as you mentioned, I mean, each phase is different, right? It's got different time lengths. Our birth certificates are not coming with a date of due stamp. I mean, there is no death date on it. If that was the case, I know what I could do and what I couldn't. But again,
planning would be easy, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Not knowing that means I have to plan for these phases. So as you mentioned, I mean, is it a 5-year plan for my active, or is it 15? These are things I'm going to have to review more often. So, if I retire at 60, yeah, maybe I got to take a look at it at 65, or maybe I look at it at 70 because all of a sudden, dementia is creeping in or Alzheimer's is doing something. Now my plan's got to change. These are things that I have to look at. So planning this is very important because you got to know that it's not just I set it at 60 and I worry about it no longer. Just like a will or anything else, I have to update this on a regular basis because my plans change. And if I don't update my plan, who knows whether I'm going to be financially viable to be able to perform it going forward. That's a very important point. That we
and you touched on some key elements there, some very key topics. So how do you plan for it? We mentioned the phases are not going to be the same length. So a couple of tips so that you can actually incorporate some of this in your plan. And what we encourage folks, knowing the data, don't worry too much about how much you're going to spend at 82. Focus on the front end there, that active phase, because often, like we just talked about, the active phase has some higher discretionary spending. That's often the stereotypical retirement commercial, right? You're traveling, the hobbies, you're golfing, spending a little higher in that phase. Also a little easier to determine the budget because it'll probably be pretty close to your pre-retirement lifestyle. Often the lifestyle you lead before retirement is pretty close to the lifestyle you lead in retirement. So if you focus on that pre-retirement lifestyle, use that to guide your budget. That'll help determine the spending in the active phase of retirement. And then that'll guide the other phases, right? Because we know the spending's a little higher there. So if you can maintain that, your plan will probably be on track. But like you mentioned, things change. You have to, like your other parts of your financial plan, you need to update it periodically. So start by looking at the pre-retirement. Say, all right, that's how much I think I'm going to spend. That'll be my active phase. I get the spending is probably higher than it'll be throughout the rest of retirement. So then you update it. It doesn't have to be done every year. It can be done every couple of years or anytime there's a material change in your situation. You keep updating and adjusting the plan as you go, which is important.
Exactly. Yeah, and I mean, the other factor, as we say, I mean, so that's why when we run a financial plan for you, if we're taking a look at these sort of aspects, that's why we're looking more or less at a level playing field at times. Because, I mean, we're basing it on your pre-retirement sort of income because that's when you're going to be active. We know it's probably going to go down in those middle phases. But as we've said before, if you follow the SMILE guidelines, it's going to be much more expensive in those later stages. So, there's no point in saying, well, let's lower it a little bit because I may only have this time frame. You never know. So you want to make sure that you've got that sort of level playing field. If you're higher in the end or in the beginning, you may be lower in the middle and you may be even on the flat line. So I mean, these are all important aspects to know why we're doing sort of a level playing field.
That's a very good point. I'll bring this back up here. This is what we looked about the retirement SMILE, that research. So we're saying use some of these numbers, right? Your pre-retirement lifestyle based on that budget. And then when we do the plan, we assume it's flat the whole way through. And then we update periodically. And the idea being if we take that higher active phase, we take the budget during that phase and assume it's flat the whole way through retirement. Well, if your plan can withstand that, you're probably fairly good standing, right? That's a conservative assumption that gives us some confidence. You're not going to run out of money, and you'll have a
Right.
fully blended plan. And then we do the regular updates because life's going to change. Eventually, you'll see the dip. And of course, we can adjust it as we go. But that's a very good starting point, and that's a key factor.
Yep.
You look at that pre-retirement lifestyle like we talked about, you assume it's level, and then you can update the plan regularly. That was a
That's
lot to
perfect.
cover in a short period of time there, Kevin. Anything you want to add? Any parting
Well, it
comments?
sure is. No, I mean, you know what? We want to make sure that you understand what the 3 phases are, and that's where it is. Active, passive, supportive. These are what you need to know. This is how retirement basic runs for most people. There are odds and ends here and there, but if you want to know more about this topic or any of the other ones we've got on our YouTube channel, after you've subscribed, first thing in the video, and anything on Facebook or on our website, please visit below. Chat with Clinton and Kevin. We are more than happy to answer your questions on any of this topic or any of the other ones that we presented going forward. But for me, I think that's a good start for how retirement phases go. Closing words are for you.
I think we covered it all, though. So we'll be back again soon with another video. Everyone stay safe. Take care.